Alright, before we get started, I'd like to give a heads up that I'll be talking a bit fast. So, it's alright if you don't understand everything.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Hey, I told you it'd be fast. But let's get started for real.
Tell me, brother, what were you the god of again?
Alright team, I've done the rounds online, and I can safely say that Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is now the highest grossing video game movie of all time. That's great and all, boss, but what is it, Jerry? It's just that I'm worried about the Mario movie, you know? It's coming out pretty soon. And, oh, don't worry, Jerry. You saw everyone's reactions to the voice cast. For all we know, the Mario movie's just gonna be an absolute flop. Hey guys, it's the Eliminator again, and today we're going to be talking about the Sonic movie. Now right off the bat, I'd just like to say that Sonic had a very rough transition to the big screen. Sorry about that. That joke was low-hanging fruit. In all seriousness, I think the Sonic movie will make for an interesting case in this video, as I can't say it was entirely bad, but at the same time, I can't really say that it was truly anything amazing. And hopefully, by the end of the video, you'll have a good understanding of what I mean by this. But in order to do that, you'll have to hear my talking points first. So, let's stop wasting time. Here we go! Wrong video! Sorry. Now, as I was saying, let's stop wasting time and get right into things. Now, as any other Sonic movie video has done, it wouldn't be a recap of the movie's history without talking about that. Now, I don't even need to show you what that is, because you've probably already got that image in your head from how much it's circulated through the internet. In fact, I bet me just beating around the bush like this probably brought back— it's the redesign. Okay? The redesign from May 2019. If you were around from May of 2019, then you probably saw that image, that scene from the first teaser trailer of the Sonic movie. And if that was the case, then you would also know that Paramount, the studio tasked with making the Sonic movie, sank a good bit of money into the redesign to fix it in order to appease the fans, which wound up driving the VFX studio out of business, unfortunately. Luckily though, there is a happy ending to this story. You see, due to the redesign, the Sonic movie actually got pushed back from November of 2019 to February 2020. So, on November 12th, 2019, a week before the movie was originally supposed to come out, we got a good look at what Paramount and Marza Animation, the studio behind the redesign, were working on. And I'd say that the results speak for themselves. And with that, the Sonic movie's reputation was basically saved. Couple that with a trailer that was more indicative of the movie's tone, and you had the biggest success story of 2019. At this point, the only thing the movie had left to do was come out. Which brings us to today and begs the question of how good the Sonic movie really is. I mean, if they were willing to go this far out of their way just to fix the design and basically overhaul more than half the movie, then that means they must have cared, right? Right? You see, there were some people who believed that the movie actually was rigged from the start, and that the whole redesign debacle was actually just a ploy for marketing. And I mean, that makes sense. Corporations aren't exactly your friends. But at the same time, I don't think they'd want to drive an entire VFX studio out of business. I mean, they're not like Marvel where they drove everyone into the ground releasing 3 films a year, but that doesn't mean they're complete saints either. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Now, let's talk about the movie itself. Just a side note, I'm only going to be talking about the first movie in this video, so we're going to be leaving out the second movie and any speculation for the third movie, as I want to judge the film on its own merits without the knowledge of what came next. Now, let's get started. Now, much like the first Sonic game, the Sonic movie really cuts back on the characters. Of course, you got Sonic and Dr. Eggman, known in this movie as Robotnik, which is his actual name by the way, as well as Tom Wachowski, a new character, and his wife, Maddie, who is a lot more secondary to the story. Now, right off the bat, I have to say that Tom and Maddie don't have that much to them compared to characters like Sonic and Robotnik. And I mean, that might not be too much of a problem given that people go to Sonic to see, the character, not the human drama. But at the same time though, with Maddie they do basically nothing. She only really comes along for the ride like halfway, maybe like 3/4, 6/10 of the way through. Now, I can forgive some of the stuff they did with Maddie because she wasn't really the focus of this movie compared to someone like Tom. But that's the problem. Tom is like half the movie. Like, he's the one that Sonic spends a large portion of his time with. So I feel like they could do a bit more with his character to make it more interesting. Now, Robotnik is a much more interesting case, mostly because he's the only human that's given a really fleshed out personality. I mean, it helps that he's played by Jim Carrey. But also, aside from Sonic, Robotnik is the only other pre-established character from the games to appear in this movie. So, of course, he's given more of a base to work with. One thing that I think really helps with this is that Robotnik's the only person who we really see have any sort of interactions with a lot of the other humans in any meaningful way. Like when everyone at the Pentagon is talking about sending him in to track Sonic, you can tell there's a bit of hesitancy in their voices. Like, despite his experience, despite all the effective things he's done for them, it shows that working with him is a double-edged sword. Or like just after that scene when Robotnik shows up in Green Hills, and he immediately dismisses all the military personnel that are there, after which he explains why his machines are superior. And that's not even mentioning all his interactions with his lackey, Agent Stone, who he constantly abuses and belittles despite his loyalty. Another example is when Robotnik successfully tracks Sonic back to Tom's house. Like, things start out simple enough. He greets Tom and then throws a few jabs at his intelligence, to which Tom rebuttals, but then gets straight to business. He knows that Sonic is there, and he immediately starts to threaten Tom. What scenes like this show us is that Robotnik is genuinely someone to be reckoned with. Despite being very exaggerated in his personality and actions, he's extremely competent and knows exactly how to get what he wants out of a situation. Another example of this is when Robotnik gets back to his base after getting his hands on one of Sonic's quills. The first thing he does is take it to be analyzed, and after it short circuits its power, he realizes he can use it to power his ship. Not only that, but we then see him use that quill in other effective ways. Like, not only does he use it to keep pace with Sonic, but it's then implied that he's going to use it to get off the Mushroom Planet. He's always productive no matter how silly things seem to get. This way, it makes moments where he's stroking his ego feel less like an attempt to talk himself up and more like him congratulating himself on his work. Work which, throughout the movie, is shown to be surprisingly effective, though not effective enough to combat the main protagonist. Speaking of which, out of all the interpretations of Sonic that we've been given, this is by far the most interesting one that I have seen. I mean, for starters, he's the only mainstream version of Sonic to have an established origin story. After that though, I'd say this version of Sonic has a different personality, where the previous versions had a level of cool-headedness to them, as if they always had an idea of what to do in a situation. This version of Sonic seems to be cocky, but it's more of a mask for his insecurities, like he doesn't always know what to do. And I mean, while that's pretty common for any character who's voiced by Ben Schwartz, it feels unique for Sonic himself, because he's never really been shown to have those kinds of flaws before. A good example of this is when Sonic is busy playing baseball with himself, and pretends to be everything everywhere all at once. No, come on, that was actually good. But anyways, Sonic seems to be having a lot of fun while playing around with everything. However, it's when he finally finishes the game that he realizes that he's truly alone. And so he starts to run in circles like before, and causes the whole electrical pulse that gets the government's attention. One of the reasons that this is a difference in personality is because Sonic would not really be insecure about having no friends. Sonic is someone who kind of likes to live freely normally. However, this version of Sonic has been through a set of experiences where being alone, or the reminder that he has to be alone and stay hidden away from everyone else, constantly eats away at him, and thus makes him do careless things. Like, if I had a nickel for every blue guy with electrical-based powers that was dealing with some kind of social isolation, I'd have 2 nickels. It isn't a lot, but it's weird it's happened twice. But in all seriousness though, like I said before, I feel this is an interesting take on Sonic, as this is one of the few versions of Sonic to really be rounded in his personality. We get to see what he likes and dislikes, but we also get to see his inner fears, his flaws, and how those flaws are projected onto the situations he's in. As was mentioned in Tom Topic's defense of movie Sonic, it feels like this version of Sonic is going to grow into the one we know and love from the games, which I'm kinda mixed on. I mean, we've had this kind of thing before, like with the MCU's version of Spider-Man, but just because something has been done by others who are more successful than you, doesn't mean that it's been done well. The problem with the MCU's version of Spider-Man, in this case, is that while yes, you could say the trilogy of films is his origin story, Spider-Man had multiple other movies in between those, and was heavily affected by the things that happened. And the reason I feel that's a problem with Movie Sonic is because Movie Sonic has no outside media to go in between. You have movie 1, movie 2, and movie 3, and then you're done. Again, I may be wrong on this one, since we're only talking about the first movie when we talk about all the stuff that's happening here. But other than that, I'd say we're pretty much done when it comes to characters. So, let's move on to the story. Now, if you've seen the Sonic movie yourself, you probably know how this section is going to go. But, for those who haven't, I'd just like to give a quick warning.
Move this man!
I wasn't even making a joke that time. Ugh. Now, where was I? Oh yeah. This section will contain spoilers for the Sonic movie. So, if you do not want to hear any spoilers about a movie that's been around for 3 years, go and watch it. But, for those of you who don't care, let's begin. In this take on the Sonic franchise, Sonic is living on a planet based around Green Hill Zone, and is raised by an owl named Longclaw. However, after a series of unfortunate events, Sonic is forced to be sent to Earth in order to hide away from any other dangers that might oppose him. And so Sonic spends the next 10 years hiding away in a town called Green Hills, until one fateful day when Sonic is forced to flee. However, Sonic got the attention of the government, who send their top scientist, Dr. Robotnik, after him. Worse still, Sonic loses the rings that he normally uses to warp between planets, and is forced to travel with the town's sheriff, Tom, in order to find them and leave Earth. Now, I hate to say it, but this is where my thoughts on things get a lot more mixed. I mean, the Sonic movie's story is pretty much your basic by-the-numbers alien story, with a few twists and turns, which isn't too bad, but when you consider that Sonic is a character with many other very pivotal stories, it kind of feels underwhelming. Now, before you say it's because it's a live-action CGI hybrid, I'd like to point out the fact that most of these pivotal stories I'm mentioning take place on Earth. Sonic's always existed in somewhat more human environments, or environments that feel like they could, more often than not, be populated by people. No, I'd say the problem is more that the franchise's core elements, or many core elements of the franchise, are absent in this movie, almost like the movie is trying to sort of set everything up before actually doing it. Now, as I said before, I'm not a huge fan of when films try to set up all the franchise's elements to become what they become later. And one of the reasons I dislike this is because I want to see this character on screen. I want to see certain traits of this character be explored or exhibited through the most faithful adaptation possible. Because if the movie is like a box office failure or such, and then, no sequels are greenlit, then we just missed the gold mine. We just missed out on a chance to see this character that we like. Now, this wouldn't be as much of a problem if the Sonic movie was really trying to be its own thing, but that's the thing about the Sonic movie. While yes, they are their own separate canon, they're still an adaptation. They aren't like Sonic Boom, where they're basically a sub-series that does their own thing. This is a representation of all the things from the games over the course of these past few years. And since the movies seem to be pretty particular about what elements from the games they adapt, it means that it will be harder for certain characters or storylines that clash with the trajectory of the films to be greenlit. So, let's see how I would change these things to make them, presumably, better. Alright, so, I like the Sonic movie's choice to open on one of the later scenes in the film, and then pause it to explain what's happened so far. Although I would change the scene that pauses, so rather than it just being when Robotnik is chasing Sonic, I'd have it be when Robotnik is just caught up with them. So, the rooftop confrontation plays out about the same as before, except Maddie is having a harder time understanding everything, so Sonic decides to explain what's happened up to this point to her and effectively the viewer. After that, I'd keep the whole thing about Sonic's backstory, but after the 10-year time jump, I would show Green Hills in a different light. Instead of Sonic just saying that, oh, Green Hills, the happiest place on Earth, I'd have it be that it's the happiest place on Earth thanks to Sonic. So we get the idea that in these past 10 years, Sonic has kind of gotten a bit lax with the whole staying hidden policy. How I would have this happen is that when Sonic is messing with Tom's speedometer, he hears about the emergency happening, that there's a major shootout. But rather than it just being a false alarm slash joke, I would have it be that it's a crime in progress. Sonic hears this and thus goes off to help Tom stop the robbery. But due to Longclaw's warning, Sonic decides to stay hidden and make it look like the police did everything to stop the robbery. This way, you could show that while yes, Sonic is trying to hide out, he still has a strong sense of justice. More importantly, it shows Sonic's willingness to sacrifice himself and the things he wants in order to help other people. So, later on, when, say, Sonic is planning to leave Earth, it's not just because he wants to stay hidden, but because he doesn't want the people of Green Hills to be put at risk. I would then keep the scene of Sonic being discovered by Tom, as I think it was a solid way of introducing the conflict of the movie. I would also keep all the scenes establishing Dr. Robotnik, because I think they do a good job of introducing him and his character. Although, one thing I would change is that this wouldn't be the first time he's dealt with Sonic. You see, when Sonic is telling Tom why it's important for him to leave the Earth and to find his rings, Sonic would explain that he's actually tried to leave the Earth before, and that when he did, he went to one of the other planets that we see on his map. The only problem was that when he got there, the planet was conquered by Dr. Robotnik, and that he had a whole army of robots powered by his enslaved creatures. Sonic would then mention that he successfully managed to fight off all the robots and free the planet, but it came at the cost of his anonymity, which forced him to leave and head back to Earth. What this would do is give Sonic a more personal connection to Dr. Robotnik, and would show in later scenes why Robotnik is so obsessed with finding Sonic, not just because Sonic is powerful, but because Sonic has been the one that's been getting in the way of all of his plans to, say, conquer the universe, or find different resources to power his machines. I'd also try to enhance the plotline about Tom being a fugitive. In the original, he was willing to stay in a bar with Sonic, even though he had basically just become an enemy of the law. In my rewrite, I would have Sonic run into the bar, not out of excitement, but because he spies a person carrying a pouch eerily similar to the pouch of rings he carries. Tom tries to get Sonic to go out, but Sonic wants to see if he can get his rings back. It fails, and the bar fight ensues, in which Tom is recognized as the fugitive from the news. Tom gets ready to throw down with the other patrons, but in the blink of an eye, he finds himself back in his truck with Sonic haphazardly trying to drive them away. What this does is give us a real idea of just how fast Sonic is, because we see that not only did he manage to take out all the other patrons, but was able to get Tom in his car and drive them away before anyone could realize it. I would also change the motel scene to be Sonic's explanation as to how his rings work and why he needs to find them again, rather than having that all happen in the bar. I would then keep everything after that the same, including the fight with Robotnik and Sonic's supposed death. Though this time, when Tom and Sonic show up at Maddie's sister's house, I would have it be a lot more urgent, in the sense that Tom is also on the run. Which finally brings us back to what was my proposed beginning scene on the rooftop. I would then have everything with the chase and the final fight play out the same, as well as the military personnel coming up to Tom's house to apologize for things. The main difference I would have, though, is that after this, Sonic walks in with a stack of boxes asking Tom where he wants them. So, we learn that Tom took the job opportunity in San Francisco, and Sonic is helping him to pack up. I included this since, in the movie, Sonic gets upset initially at the idea of Tom wanting to leave Green Hills, but over the course of the film, he comes to accept that, hey, what's good for him might not be good for everyone else. Not only that, but since Sonic got his rings back, he now has a form of instant transportation if he ever wants to go and see Tom again. And sequel bait aside, that's the Sonic movie, or at least my rewrite of it. Now let's wrap up the video. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, share, and tell me down in the comments section. What was your favorite part of the Sonic movie? What was your least favorite? And what parts of the movie would you change? Sorry if I came off as overly negative in this one. A lot like the Mario movie, I really want these movies to do well. I want them to succeed in everything, but it can be hard because, you know, sometimes what you want clashes with what's best. And that isn't to say we got the best version of the Sonic movie here, but what I am saying is you need to find a solid middle ground, unlike Eternal. But anyways, subscribe today to join the A-list, and have a great day. Bye! Now that that video's done, I can finally take a nice long break. Huh? someone screaming? Oh. Yeah, what was that? Wait, where the hell am I?